What these 50 people had in common was almost never the thing they credited. I noticed it about 6 interviews in. The advice did not match the behavior. Ask why it worked, you get one answer. Watch what they did, you get another. That gap runs the whole video. The sourcing first, because it matters. This is a composite study. 50 people clearing $5,000 a month or better, assembled from public income reports, podcast and YouTube interviews, Reddit and forum teardowns, and revenue dashboards people posted themselves. No private data. And the sample is biased toward people willing to talk about money in public, which is not a normal thing to be willing to do. Everyone quiet is missing. Keep that in your pocket. $5,000 a month is a gross number in most of these cases. Net was lower, sometimes a lot lower, and only a handful published enough to check. Trait 1 is the easiest to accept. They treat money as feedback rather than as a score. Behaviorally, that looks like this. When revenue moves, they ask what changed. When it drops, they ask the same question in the same tone. Closer to 40 of the 50 could point at a specific decision that moved a specific number and roughly the week it happened. Nobody said the word mindset. I checked. The people who failed talked about money as a result. These people talked about it as a reading. They run a lab, not a casino. A casino gives you an outcome. A lab gives you information. So the next question isn't how hard they worked. It's what they chose to run experiments on. Nothing any of them was doing was new. Freelance services, a niche newsletter, e-commerce, a course, an agency, software that already existed twice over. Roughly a third were doing something so unoriginal they were mildly embarrassed to describe it. Boring is not a compliment here. It's a design choice. A lab doesn't invent its procedure from scratch. It repeats a known one and controls the variables. If the method is proven, the only variable left is your execution. And execution is a variable you can actually turn. The people placing bets went the other way. They looked for the untested thing, because an untested thing can never tell you that you're the problem. Which raises the question of how you find that out quickly. They set a kill date before they start. A number and a date, written down somewhere they'd have to look at it. 90 days, one busy season, $200 and 20 hours. I could only verify the written version in about half the 50. Nearly all of them describe the behavior. The date matters more than the number, because a plan without a stop condition isn't an experiment. A lab runs small and stops on schedule. A casino runs until the money's gone and calls that commitment. So their failures were cheap. And cheap failures can happen often, which changes what a week has to look like. All 50 had failed. 41 of the 50 had at least one attempt that ran longer than 6 months and went nowhere. Not a weekend experiment, a real, sustained, embarrassing failure. Here's what separated them. They could describe the failure without describing themselves. The offer was wrong. The channel was wrong. The price was wrong. In a lab, a failed run is a data point with a date on it. In a casino, a loss is a verdict about the person holding the chips. Roughly a third described something like a year of feeling like a fraud. They filed the result anyway and ran the next one. Which is why they were so hard to stop, and why they were so boring about their tools. Fewer platforms than you'd expect. 1 or 2, not 5. The tool stacks were almost comically small. A spreadsheet, 1 email platform, 1 payment processor, a notes app. Almost none of them had bought a course in the last 2 years. I checked for this specifically because I expected the opposite. A lab keeps the same instruments for a decade so the readings stay comparable. Change the equipment every quarter, and you can't tell what any of your results mean. New platform, new software, new method. Those are bets wearing the costume of preparation. Which brings us to the one that reframes everything before it. Nearly all of them had a stretch of 2 to 3 years where, from the outside, nothing was happening. Not building quietly toward a launch. Nothing. Small numbers, small money, the same procedure run again with one thing changed. Closer to 40 of the 50 had that period, and it lasted about that long. That's what a lab looks like from the street. Lit, occupied, nobody clapping. Time was the strongest common variable, not talent. Most of them were not especially talented. That's the part nobody wants. And that's why the advice never matched the behavior. You can't sell 3 years. You can sell a method, a mindset, a morning routine. So when you ask them what worked, they reach for the sellable answer, and I don't think they're lying. They just can't see the variable they were standing inside. So the question was never what these 50 had in common. It was how long each of them was willing to keep the lab open and keep taking readings. Nobody wins in a lab. They just find out.